my name is Wendy Barnes. I am a survivor of human trafficking. When I was 11 years old, my mom remarried and my stepfather started sexually abusing me. So it came out that I was being abused by my stepdad. It went to court. He ended up taking a plea deal. He got 3 months of counseling as his punishment. Then the case was closed. And at that point, my mom was free to move me back in with him again. My mom did take him back, but it was mostly for financial reasons. My mom moved me and my brother to the upstairs portion of the house. The stepdad stayed at the bottom of the house, but I could still feel his presence. You add that onto me being bullied and the poverty, the parental absence, and it left me feeling very lost, alone, and unloved. So when I was 15 years old, a neighbor girl who was probably about 17 or 18 years old, she came to my house and invited me to go to a swimming pool party. As I'm walking in her footsteps, I noticed that she starts walking towards this group of teenagers. And I can tell there's this one guy who's the center of attention. She walked up to him and she said, "Hey, Greg, I want you to meet my friend Wendy. Wendy, I want you to meet my friend Greg." He turned around, he reached down his hand, he looked me right in the eye, and he said, "Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Wendy." And instantly, my heart started going pity-pat. And he said, "Hey, can I get your number?" I gave it to him, and I didn't think he'd really call, but he did. We would talk for hours and hours. Sometimes we would talk the entire night long. It didn't take very long at all for us to hook up, and well, I quickly became pregnant with his baby. All I wanted was for somebody to love me. And with him, he loved me. So right after I turned 17 and he turned 18, we had our first child, Latasha. He came to me and he said, "The only way that we're ever going to really be able to make it together is if you move out of your mom's house." And I was like, "Yeah, and how's that supposed to happen?" He says, "Well, I got a plan." He said, "All you have to do is you and Latasha move into a shelter downtown Seattle. Once you are there, you will be considered emancipated. Then you can go to the welfare office, you apply for welfare, we get a check, we go get an apartment, and we live happily ever after." I completely believed him. So I basically ran away from home because I knew my mom would not approve of this. So he dropped us off at the shelter. My introduction to the shelter was, "Here is your room. The bathroom is down the hall. You leave every morning at 7 a.m. and you come back every night at 7 p.m. That was it. That was all." But the only thing is back in those days, it took about 45 days to get your first welfare check. And after the first week, Latasha's diapers and formula are gone. So I got a hold of him and I was like, "Greg, we're out of diapers. We're on a formula. What are we going to do?" He goes, "Oh, don't worry about it. I got a job we can do." And at that, for some reason, I thought we were going to go clean somebody's house because he told me previously that's how he got money occasionally, because he would clean people's houses. He says, "You got to love Latasha a lot to do this job." And for some reason, I automatically thought, well, this house must be really messy. But I was like, I'm good. Let's go clean this house. Let's make this money. Let's get her diapers and formula. So I bundled up Latasha with her wet diaper and I walked up to go meet him where he told me to meet him. And after a few minutes, I was like, "So what's the job we're going to do?" He said, "Well, all you have to do is walk across the street. A man is going to stop and pick you up. He's going to offer you money to have sex with him. You have sex with him right there in the car. And when you're done, you have money for her diapers and formula." What? Huh? What? And he goes, "Well, don't you love Latasha?" I was like, "Yeah, I love Latasha, but how am I supposed to do something like that?" He said, "Well, if you really love your daughter, you would be willing to do anything for her." I didn't feel like I had any choice. When I started to walk across the street, I thought, okay, all I really have to do is I'll walk down the block, I'll walk back. And at that point, he'll realize that I do love Latasha. It was more about proving my love for my daughter. But as soon as I crossed that street, a car pulled up in front of me. I remember to this day how bad my hand shook as I went to go open the front door. I got in. He offered me money to have sex with him. And well, I didn't say anything. He then told me that he knew of a place that we could go do it in the woods close by, and I still didn't say anything. He drove to the location, pulled over on the side of the road. He got out, and so I got out and I followed him into the woods a little ways. He started taking off his clothes, and so I started slowly taking off my jeans. And as I did, I started to silently pray, please, God, don't let this happen to me. Please, God, just get me out of this somehow, some way. Please, God, I'll be a good girl from now on. I promise. If you just get me out of this situation. And I remember as I had laid down on the ground, the man climbed on top of me. And I looked up to the sky and I realized there is no God. Or maybe worse, even yet, God just didn't care about me. It was only a few moments later, he got off of me and we got back into his car and he dropped me off where he had picked me up. As I approached Greg, don't ask me why, but I automatically reached my hand out to give him the money, as if to say, see, I am worthy. See, I do love Latasha. See, I am a good mother. And as he took the money out of my hand, I turned around and I started violently throwing up. But Greg was there to tell me how much he loved me and how he now knows that he made the right decision in picking me to be his future wife. He told me what a good mother I was, and we went and got our diapers, we got our formula, and we even had a little bit left over to get McDonald's. The only thing is, a week later, the diapers and the formula are gone. And this time it's a little bit more easier for him to say, well, why don't you do 2 or 3? Because if you can make more money, you can get out of the shelter. What, do you want your daughter in the shelter for the rest of her life? Don't you think she deserves better than that? From that point, he built and ran one of the largest prostitution rings on the West Coast of that time frame. It consisted of anywhere between 4 to 10 girls at any given time. It spanned from Seattle, Washington to Southern California. And for the next 13 years, during that time, having 3 children with him, I was trafficked by him. In the beginning, I would be prostituted about once a week. Over the years, it really fluctuated how much I would have to go out depending on how many other girls he was trafficking. I worked the streets, I worked escort services, and then private homes. When I got into the escort services, there were some weird stuff. Like I remember one time this guy dressed up like a full-blown baby with a diaper and everything, and he wanted me to be his mommy, but then do sexual things to him. There was another guy who was in, I guess it's S&M. I was no good at that. So I tried to play the role, and I remember when it was over with, he gave me a huge tip and said, don't ever do one of these calls again. You're no good at this. You're too sweet. You're too kind. And I was like, okay. So a lot of people wonder, it's like, well, why did you stay in that situation? Why didn't you leave? And there's just so many different factors that people don't understand. He got most of us addicted to then physical beatings and threats. Anytime one of us would leave, he would blame one of the other girls and make her go out and make the extra money. And also, you better go find her. You're going to make her money on top of your money every night until you go find her and bring her back. There's a deep connection in that life that we connect with each other. The other girls and myself, we're very, very connected. We're not allowed to have outside, conversations and relationships and everything. And so we're very close knit. One of the times in particular, I had left. I was gone for about 45 days. At this point, I had 2 children with him and I took both of the kids. And I was not surviving in the real world. I didn't know how to live. Nobody understood what I went through. I wanted to talk to one of the girls so bad. I just wanted to feel a connection. I wanted to know, how are things going? And so I got a hold of her. She started begging me to come back. Please, Wendy, come back. Please, Wendy, come back. And the conversation went on. And I found out through that conversation that Greg was beating her every single night. And she was just now, actually, that same day was the day that she was released from the hospital. I always say that the bond of torture and pain is stronger than the bond of love. And so, of course, when she begged me to come back, I did. I didn't want her to suffer anymore. Upon my return, he put me in a room and for the next 3 days made me smoke crack. for 3 days straight, kept me awake the whole entire time. He beat me and me during that time. And I remember on the third day, I was in the corner on the floor, just kind of, I was out of my mind. I hadn't slept in 3 days. He walked over to me, he looked down, and he said, "You ever going to leave me again?" I looked up at him and I was like, "No, Greg, I'll never leave you again. I promise I'll never leave you again." That was the last time I ever tried leaving him. So this lasted for 13 years. It was 4 days before my 30th birthday. I had just given birth to our second son 16 days prior. Greg was in the living room with the newborn baby on his lap. I remember I was at the kitchen stove making macaroni and cheese because I knew the kids were going to be home from school. And I looked over and I see the SWAT team running towards our house. And you have to realize that it is ingrained in us, it is being into us that we protect Greg no matter what. You protect Greg from the police. You stand in front of him, you take the bullet, you get him out the back window, you do whatever you have to do. You protect Greg no matter what. I accidentally locked eyes with one of the police officers running towards us. I was frozen. It had been so long since I had looked somebody in the eye. And I remember he motioned to me like this. And all of that training that Greg had instilled in us went right out the door. So I walked over to the front door. I swung it open for them. I said, "Greg, the police are here for you." They took Greg down. They handcuffed him. They took him out of the house. And then he came over to me and they said, "We're going to need to take you down and ask you some questions also." So they handcuffed me. They take me down to the station and they brought me into this room, this tiny room, very stale. 2 male police officers came in to talk to me. And all I could think of was, how bad am I going to get beat tonight if I talk to these guys? So I did what Greg always told me to do if ever in that situation, and that is put your eyes to the ground and don't say a word. So I sat there, I didn't say anything. They kept trying to talk to me and I just kept my eyes to the ground and wouldn't say anything. Well, they took this as a sign of defiance and said, "Fine. You want to play that game? You're going to be charged with everything he's being charged with." I had 26 felony charges. My bail was $3 million. And I ultimately pled guilty to 2 counts of promoting prostitution. And I was sentenced to 23 months in prison. When I was sentenced, he was also sentenced around the same time and he got 10 years. All 3 of my kids were taken from me while I was in prison. I remember the children's court judge still not understanding the whole, I wouldn't talk. I still wouldn't talk. So to them, I was this evil person that was trafficking. I remember her saying, "I will make sure that you will never have authority over your children again. You will never be in the position to parent your children again." When I was released from prison, I went to college for 4 years, although I was only able to obtain my earn my associate's degree because I was so far behind. During this time, I'm also dealing with parole and probation, and I'm trying to figure out how to live. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm working with the therapists. I'm working with the correction counselors. I'm working with the attorneys and the judges and everybody else. And I am impressing everybody. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. And I went back to the judge. He went back to the court, the same exact judge. But this time I had attorneys and counselors and the police officers that arrested me were there to represent me because I connected up with them afterwards and, really educated them on what we went through. And she gave me custody of my middle child, Gregory, back because by that time Latasha was 16 and she was actually already getting married. And the youngest one, he had already made developmental connection with grandma as mom. And so we didn't want to break that. So after the 4 years of probation and going to school, I moved down to Southern California with my mom. Over the years, I would think, yeah, I'm going to write a book. And I would start writing and writing and writing. But then, I'd realize I don't know how to write a book. I don't know anything about sentence structure. But I ended up with about 800 pages of emotional throw up. My mom passed away. I met one of her friends. She read my 800 pages of emotional throw up, said, Wendy, we have to find you somebody to get this written. She met somebody through Facebook who was an editor. And so I contacted the lady. I said, I have no money. I said, all I can do is I can pay you 20% of whatever I earn. And she said, Wendy, this story is so important. It has to get out. So we were working on this book for, quite some time. I want to say like a year and a half, but I'm working a full-time job. She has a full-time job. We went to work, we got the book done, and got my book published in 2015. There's two reasons that I'd share my story. One is to help others to understand. I believe that it is through understanding that compassion grows. And it's only with compassion that we can make the world a better place. And so I want people to understand the mindset and the situation better so that they will have the tools to better be able to help others. And then I also want to give others hope that things do get better. It takes a long time. And the struggles that I've been through, I have hit rock bottom since being out of there, and the struggle is real. I will never be where other people are my age range because I had such a late start in life. It is difficult, but I just keep putting one foot in front of the other, take a break when you need to, and then figure it out and just take the next one little step. And sometimes I look back and I get to see the mountains that I have climbed previously that are so far back there that I never thought I'd be able to get over. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember that mountain and I remember that mountain, but look at that now. I think what is so powerful in my life today is that I feel safe and content. And that feeling, just feeling safe and content, is an amazing and wonderful place to be. For somebody who may be living in that life, there are people out there who understand, who are willing to help, but finding those people can be very difficult at times. Just be prepared for that journey out and adapting into the real world. It's going to be a roller coaster. Be prepared. But there is hope. There is hope, and there is a world out here that is amazing and wonderful once you adapt to it. But it takes time to adapt to it. For other people who may be wanting to help others come out of the life, meet them where they are at. Don't try rescuing them, because that whole entire process is useless. The people who are in that world have to be the ones to make the decision, and they have to be the ones to take those steps to get out. But you know what they need? They need your support. They need your love. They need your understanding. They need tools and resources so you can provide those to them. Thank you for listening to my story today. Hearing traumatic stories can be heavy. Please take gentle care of yourself today. And just remember, never underestimate how much it means to somebody who doesn't feel loved to have somebody care about them. Every piece of kindness, every time you go out of your way to care about somebody and show how much you care through your actions, it spreads. So please, spread love. Let's bring kindness back into style again.